As we look around the world, we see many ethnic groups exercising political power over other ethnic groups. The groups without power resent those who have power. The groups with power often abuse their authority. Sometimes the imbalance leads to conflict, rebellion, and bloodshed. As Christians, we would love to see all conflict cease. However, that is very unlikely to happen. Humans are sinful people, therefore strife and friction will always be part of life. The 7th chapter of Luke illustrates that amidst the political strife that is so common in our world, it is possible for one good man with power to create an atmosphere of peace within the small realm under his control. That should encourage each of us to use whatever power we have to create a positive relationship with anyone who might be under our authority. When Jesus began healing people, he attracted a large crowd that followed him from place to place. Luke 6:17 tells us that after Jesus spent all night in prayer and chose the 12 men who would be his apostles, he went to a level place and began speaking. He pronounced blessings and woes. Then he taught about love, judging, and hypocrisy. He ended with a parable contrasting the wise man building on rock and the foolish man building on sand. Now let's pick up reading at Luke 7, verse 1. When Jesus had completed all his words in the hearing of the people, he went to Capernaum. This is not the first time Jesus went to Capernaum. In fact, this is the third time Capernaum is mentioned in the book of Luke. Capernaum was a city on the north side of the Sea of Galilee. Verse 2. And a centurion's slave, who was highly regarded by him, was sick and about to die. Now when he heard about Jesus, he sent some Jewish elders asking him to come and save the life of his slave. And when they came to Jesus, they were earnestly pleading with him, saying, "He is worthy for you to grant this to him. For he loves our nation, and it was he who built us our synagogue." We often think there was total animosity between the Jews and Romans, and that the Romans were brutal overlords. There is some truth to that. There obviously was some conflict between the groups, but this verse shows us there was also some friendliness. This particular centurion was a good man who had built a synagogue for the Jews. Instead of using his position to enrich and flatter himself, he used his money and power to help the Jews and make life better for them. The result was the Jews liked the centurion, even though the centurion was a Roman who had power over them. The Jewish elders called the Roman a good man and eagerly asked Jesus to help him. There are situations today where one ethnic group has political power over another ethnic group. Humans are naturally inclined to abuse their power in order to stroke their ego and make themselves rich. This story illustrates the good relationships that can happen when people with power use their power to help the people under their authority. Verse 6. Now Jesus was going on his way with them, and when he was not far from the house, the centurion sent friends, saying to him, "Lord, do not trouble yourself further, for I am not good enough for you to come under my roof." It is remarkable that the centurion, a Roman, would feel unworthy to have Jesus under his roof. Despite having power and authority, he was humble. Verse 7. For this reason I did not even consider myself worthy to come to you, but just say the word and my servant will be healed. For I also am a man placed under authority, with soldiers under me. And I say to this one, go, and he goes, and to another, come, and he comes, and to my slave, do this, and he does it. The centurion understood the power of Jesus. He understood that all Jesus had to do was speak, and he could control disease and prevent death. Verse 9. Now when Jesus heard this, he marveled at him, and he turned to the crowd that was following him and said, I say to you, not even in Israel have I found such great faith. Jesus acknowledged the centurion had faith. Faith is a word that is used many times in Christianity, but there is some confusion about the definition of faith. Faith is believing in the unseen, something that has not happened yet. However, biblical faith is not blind, irrational, wishful thinking. Biblical faith is believing something will happen in the future based on things that have happened in the past. In this case, the centurion knew Jesus was healing people by speaking. He believed Jesus could also heal his servant simply by speaking. Verse 10. And when those who had been sent returned to the house, they found the slave in good health. And it happened that soon afterwards, Jesus went to a city called Nain, and his disciples were going along with him, accompanied by a large crowd. This gives a clear picture of what it was like to be Jesus. He was walking to Nain, accompanied by his disciples and a large crowd. This is the only time the city of Nain is mentioned in the Bible. It was about 6 miles or 10 kilometers from Nazareth, That would have been about a 2-hour walk. Both Nain and Nazareth sat on top of hills. There was a valley between them. Since Jesus grew up in Nazareth, he was probably fairly familiar with Nain. Verse 12. Now as Jesus approached the gate of the city, behold, a dead man was being carried out, the only son of his mother, and she was a widow, and a sizable crowd from the city was with her. Luke specifically tells us the mother was a widow and that the dead man was her only son. Verse 13. And when the Lord saw her, he felt compassion for her and said to her, "Do not cry." And he came up and touched the coffin, and the bearers came to a halt. And he said, "Young man, I say to you, arise." And the dead man sat up and began to speak, and Jesus gave him back to his mother. And fear gripped them all, and they began glorifying God, saying, "A great prophet has arisen among us, and God has visited his people." And this report concerning Jesus went out all over Judea and in all the surrounding district. Nain was in Galilee, but verse 17 says the report about Jesus went out over all Judea. In this case, the word Judea refers to all the areas where the Jews were living. Today, if a man came back to life in the middle of his funeral procession, that would be big news. It was also big news in the 1st century AD. Verse 18. And the disciples of John reported to him about all these things. Summoning 2 of his disciples, John sent them to the Lord, saying, "Are you the one who is to come, or should we look for someone else?" This strikes me as somewhat of an odd question. It seems like John should have known that Jesus is the one. Verse 20. When the men came to him, they said, "John the Baptist has sent us to you, saying, 'Are you the one who is to come, or should we look for someone else?'" At that very time, Jesus cured many people of diseases and afflictions and evil spirits, and he granted sight to many who were blind. And he answered and said to them, "Go and report to John what you have seen and heard. The blind receive sight, the lame walk, the lepers are cleansed, and the deaf hear. The dead are raised up, the poor have the gospel preached to them. Blessed is he who does not take offense at me." Jesus performed miracles and healed people in order to prove that he is God. When John's question was brought to Jesus, he allowed his actions to speak for him. Humans are naturally inclined to abuse power in order to stroke their ego and enrich themselves. However, that leads to resentment and conflict. The centurion in Capernaum took a different approach. He used his wealth and authority to help the Jews. The result was the Jews liked him and helped him in return. What is something you can do to help those under your authority so that goodwill is created and strife is either reduced, eliminated, or avoided? Thanks for visiting Bible Mountain. If you have already joined my email list, thank you, and please tell others about Bible Mountain. If you have not joined my email list yet, please do so now. In order to join, go to BibleMountain.com, click on subscribe, and that will take you to a page where you can sign up. Your email address will not be sold nor given away. Once again, thanks for visiting Bible Mountain.